Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video. Myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a Ukraine War News Update. First part thereof for the 17th of July 2025. And we're going to look at the Ukrainian General Staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats applied. We've got 1,190 personnel lost, which is about where we have seen it for the last week or so. 4 tanks and 1 troop carrying AFVs. It's well below the daily average for those categories. But 43 artillery systems is twice the daily average for that, and shows that the Ukrainians are still doing a good job of degrading the Russian artillery. 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. That's good news there. Don't know what that is at the moment. Could be in Andrew Perpetua's loss list. 154 vehicles and fuel tanks. That's a high number there. So that's ticked back up. We could see a lot more logistical vehicles being taken out by the Ukrainians. Okay. Before we go and look at materiel losses, we're going to go and talk about personnel. And we're going to start with the Chris Owicki thread. He says, a leaked list of casualties from a Russian battalion taking part in an offensive suggests a killed to wounded ratio of 1.36 to 1. That's how that should be written. According to, actually, and it's worse than that when you look at deserters and prisoners, etc. So we'll look at the stats in a second. According to US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, losses stand at over 100,000 dead this year alone. Wow. So 100,000 dead is what Marco Rubio said the other day. Okay, a reported list of the losses of the Russian 3rd Motorized Rifle Battalion of the 9th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade, military unit number 71443, lists 163 casualties in only a month. Daily casualties are stated to be between 5 and 10 a day. So remember, casualties include killed, wounded, deserters, POWs, etc. Okay, and just generally missing in action. When you add some of these numbers up, it's not looking good for the Russians. You would normally expect there to be way more wounded than dead, at least 3 to 1. The more wounded you have, the better it is, because you are able to keep people being wounded and not have them turn from wounded to dead. So what you want to do is have really good medevac facilities. You have staging points. You want to, the platinum 5 minutes, isn't it? And then the golden hour. So you want to stop the blood flowing within 5 minutes, tourniquets and whatnot. Then you get them out to some medical help within the hour. And then, you leave them to be sorted out by medical teams in mobile medical units or whatever, or getting taken for the Ukrainians. Some medical facilities are relatively close because this is the country of Ukraine they're fighting in. Okay, so that should mean, and think does mean, that the Ukrainians have a better ratio of wounded to dead because their wounded stay wounded and then don't turn into the dead category because they can't retrieve them. It's very difficult in the contact line. You've got drones flying about all over the shop. So if you get wounded, quite often you're left there for 3 days before you get extracted. And actually, the Ukrainians really struggle with this as well, but they just have better stats as far as I can work out than the Russians in terms of being able to get their wounded, have some treatment. And so for the Russians, you have fewer wounded and more dead. But then when you take into then you normally would do, and then when you take into account some of these other categories, it looks really, really problematic. So this is almost certainly an underestimate, as commanders often underreport losses to make themselves look better or to exclude those who have been executed or tortured to death by their own side. The brigade is known for cruelty towards its men, and here are the stats. So the following losses are recorded. Killed, 24 are killed here. Wounded, 65. Okay, so you think, well, actually, there are more wounded than killed. That is a 2 to 1. That's 48. That's 2.5 to 1. That's not too bad. But then when you talk about missing in action and you add them on, which is what I think Chris Owicki's done here, because that suggests they have been killed and they're left out on the fields, then the ratio is 1.36 to 1. So that is 24 and 64, making 88. If you multiply 65 by 1.36, you get 88. But actually, if you add the captured and deserted on there, then the ratio is even worse. It's now a ratio of 65 to 88, and I don't know what that goes down to. I haven't done the maths there, but it's going to be worse than 1.36. So the MIAs are almost certainly dead as well, is what Chris Owicki says. So the ratio killed or MIA to wounded is thus 1.36 to 1. According to an officer, most casualties are caused by artillery strikes, kamikaze drone attacks, and airdrop ammunition from drones. The 9th Brigade currently appears to be involved in Russia's incursion in the Sumy a region of Ukraine which has been particularly bloody. Men from the battalion are frequently reported to be wounded or going missing after being sent to combat missions without proper support, coordination and reconnaissance. Its Chief of Staff, Major Artem Fyodorovich Makarov, is being blamed for poor operational planning. Just bad stats for the Russians again. 1,000 fallen heroes, so 1,000 dead bodies have been returned to Ukraine, and exchange of bodies took place. I presume that's light flight, 1,000 for 1,000, but I don't know, and I didn't know the last time either. Anyway, that's quite a lot of bodies. Remember last time there were a number of Russian bodies in the Ukrainian bodies that came back too. Okay, moving on. We have, not for the first time, in fact, I'm wondering whether this is about the fourth time I reported on something similar like this. Videos have appeared claiming that in the temporarily occupied territory, the Russians have received water from alleged volunteers that turns out to be poisoned. According to reports, anywhere from between 10 and 30 Russian soldiers have died. Here's a video of someone who is very ill having drunk the water. So this is a bit of sabotage that has previously happened, as I've reported. And yeah, here you see some claims to that effect. That's coming from Max 25 there. Okay, on July the 2nd, says Anton Gerashenko, the Ukrainian Defense Forces delivered one of the largest blows to the Russian military command in the entire war. So this is the Koronovo striking Kursk region on the 155th Brigade. I've done 2 reports on this already. I did a whole video, or a whole segment previously. But there's some more detail coming out about this. Approximately 17 kilometers from the front line, Ukrainian intelligence detected significant activity and movement of Russian troops, and they sent a strike in to that place in Koronovo, and it exceeded all expectations, the success there. So Russia deployed a forward command post of its most combat-ready unit to this direction, 155th Marine Brigade, for the offensive of the Sumy region. From Koronovo, the de facto commander of the Russian strike group in the Kursk region, Deputy Commander of the Russian Navy, Major General Mikhail Gudkov, call sign Varyag, was directing the Russian offensive. So here's a list of Russian officers eliminated as far as we know now. So this is from Russian sources. Deputy Commander of the whole Russian Navy and the Commander of the Russian Navy's coastal and ground forces, in charge of 155th, Major General M. Gudkov. The Deputy Commander of the Russian Navy's coastal and ground forces, Colonel Shikalyev. Commander of the 155th Brigade. So sorry, I think Gudkov was a former commander of 155th, but then you got the commander of the 155th, Colonel S. Ilyin. So that's 3 really top commanders there, but it goes on. Chief of Staff of the 155th, Colonel L. Bashkadin, and then Commander of the 1st Battalion of the 155th, Lieutenant Colonel Zakharov. But then also, following people also eliminated the brigade's artillery chief, the air defense chief, the communications chief, the chief of the brigade's drone department. Most of their assistants were also killed. The total losses amounted to about 20 killed and 30 wounded Russian soldiers, and these were high-ranking soldiers. Thus, the headquarters of the Russian Marine Brigade and the leadership of the strike group and ground forces of the Russian Navy were completely eliminated. The Russian offensive in this sector of the front was paralyzed for some time, and command and control over the troops in the area was lost. The 42-year-old Gudkov was appointed to the post personally by Putin himself in March this year. Prior to that, he commanded the same 155th, as I mentioned, brigade, and Putin appointed him to increase the fighting capability of all Russian Navy troops. The 155th is well known for its war crimes. From the very beginning of the war, Gudkov gave orders to execute civilians in Bucha, Irpin, and Hostomel, where the 155th brigade was operating at the time. Gudkov then openly promoted war crimes with his brigade and affiliated bloggers, repeatedly posting videos of the execution of Ukrainian prisoners of war. Gudkov did this deliberately to prevent the soldiers from surrendering for fear of revenge from the Ukrainians. Gudkov himself, of course, never went on assaults and did not come closer than 15 to 20 kilometers from the front line. However, he was killed along with the entire brigade headquarters that had been carrying out orders to kill civilians and prisoners. No less interesting than Gudkov's elimination itself was a political fallout and information infighting between supporters of the Chief of General Staff Gerasimov and his opponents. Putin had promoted Gudkov to a position far higher than any of that of any other Russian brigade commander, and from this post, Gudkov could well have become a rival to Gerasimov to become the Chief of General Staff, according to Russian Z blogger Alexei Romanov, who was critical of Gerasimov. General Sukrab Akhmedov, who is completely loyal to Gerasimov and had prior relationship with Gudkov, has been appointed acting commander of the Russian Navy's coastal and ground forces. Romanov thus directly hinted that Gerasimov himself leaked the information about Gudkov's location to the Ukrainians. In response, Gerasimov's supporter, Russian propagandist Solovyev, accused several bloggers close to Gudkov, including Vladimir Grubnik, of supplying the 155th Brigade with a batch of radio stations that allowed Ukrainians to access the communication system. So there's a claim that there were a whole bunch of radios that could be intercepted easily. Whatever the case may be, the Russians were unable to identify the source of the information leak. A really successful hit that was, and hopefully there are many more. Now, I reported to you yesterday in a breaking news piece on this Guardian article, series of articles that looked at the right-wing terrorist organization called The Base that came out of the US, is now operational inside Ukraine and around the world. It seems to be led by a chap called Ronaldo Nazaro, who is arguably an FSB agent. So we have this American FSB agent who is directing stuff and has caused the death of this Voronich, Colonel Voronich, who's involved in SPU operations, like Secret Service operations and whatnot. Really high value target that the Russians have taken out. I say the Russians because clearly they're behind this. So yeah, just to remind you of that, go and check my breaking news piece yesterday, and possibly leaked to this in terms of, and I'm massively speculating here, we don't know what happened here, but there are many young people who have been bribed or blackmailed into doing the bidding of the FSB. Here, a cadet has opened fire during training in northern Ukraine, killing 2 Ukrainian soldiers. It's so sad, this, because it's just needless death of the real vital resource for the Ukrainians. The shooting occurred at a training ground operated by the Ukrainian ground forces, obviously a human tragedy as well. The motive for the attack remains unknown, and the cadet was detained under Ukraine's Criminal Procedure Code, police said in a statement. Right, we're going to now look at the loss figures from the 16th, which is actually yesterday. So this is a catch-up from Andrew Perpetua. We have quite a lot of kit lost by the Ukrainians and the Russians, but remember, there are a lot of comms equipment listed at the moment, which is a worry, obviously, for the Ukrainians, but that might skew the data to some degree because I don't think it's as valuable as the other kit that's on the list. Right, let's go to Ukrainians first, and sadly enough, there seems to be a high-value bit of kit right at the top here, which is something related to an S300. It doesn't know what it is, but something has been blown up there. That is S300-ish in an Iskander strike. It could be a decoy. Then we have all this comms equipment and Starlinks. I wouldn't worry too much about that, and some UGVs. And again, I wouldn't worry too much about them. I mean, they can be quite expensive. They can, but then, when I say quite expensive, you got a big old unit like this. It could be as much as $50,000, right? But it's not the millions of dollars of a tank. But then I guess it can be about the same amount as an SUV, or maybe more expensive than an SUV. So yeah, I'm unsure about the UGV inclusion. The same with drones as well, like actual reconnaissance drones. I'm not too interested on this kind of list, but actually they can be quite expensive, right? Anyway, there's a boat here. We've got Panzerhaubitze 2000 self-propelled howitzer from the Germans. That's been damaged. 2 S-222 Bogdana, the indigenously made self-propelled artillery system, which is being produced at a pretty decent rate. So you're going to see more and more of these on the list. I'd say that's a good thing. I'd rather see a Bogdana than anything else. I'd rather see a Bogdana than D30. Even though D30 is not worth as much, it means that they're using better kit more frequently. frequently, so they don't have to use D30s. Anyway, Leopard 2A6 has been damaged. That's a bit of a worry there. Night Vision Vandal drone. We have a few BMPs. Striker back on the list. Haven't seen one of them for some time. American provided APC, decent bit of kit. Bandsvan 10 there. That's the articulated APCs that the Ukrainians received from Sweden. You got some MRAPs, Humvees, trucks, and then quite a lot of civilian vehicles on the list today. So a large amount of civilian vehicles taking up a big proportion of the Ukrainian loss list. Quite a bit of kit there, though, I guess. And then over to the Russians, and I think the Russians have mainly lost ATVs and civilian vehicles, which then, if we look back at the initial figures from the General Staff, that kind of fits in there. 154 vehicles and fuel tanks, 4 tanks and 1 troop-carrying AFVs. They're just not using the traditional combat assets. And so when we look at these lists and you go, well, the Ukrainians have lost more of X, Y, and Z, more combat assets. The Russians aren't using combat assets, which is a sign of the success of the Ukrainians already. And that's what we see here. Oops, if we go back there, we see, 3 destroyed boats. We've got some electronic warfare kits taken out, but then it's just D30 artillery pieces and a single infantry mobility vehicle, a Tiger. Then it's trucks, ATVs, all these four-wheelers and motorcycles. Then quads. Then you've got loafs of Bukanka vans, all sorts of Bukanka vans, including party loafs, which is what Andrew Perpetua calls the ones that have had the roof at the back taken off, so it's almost like a flatbed but with half sides here, so you can have a party in the back. That's why he calls it party loaf. All sorts of different vehicles there, and quite a lot of them. But an interesting difference in what is being taken out by either side. Okay, now moving on, there is news that Panzer S2, so it's a decent bit of kit for the Russians, has been taken out in the last 24 hours by the Southern Defense Forces. That's a Panzer air defense system and radar stations, including the Kupol and Rosa. So we might see some high value kit on a loss list over the next day or two from Andrew Perpetua. Here we have a Caesar that has been hit by a drone strike, and this is why you have cope cages like this, because they do work. So there's your Caesar, it looks in pretty good nick, and a drone blasts its way through a cage here, but it doesn't look like it's done any damage past that initial blast, so good news there. Now, talking about drones hitting vehicles, here is an ambulance that has been hit. This is a war crime. FPV drones hitting ambulances are war crimes because they know what they're aiming for. They have a video at the front. I mean, you fly an FPV in a way that you can see precisely because you can see what you're aiming for, right? I mean, these are kamikaze drones that you need to be seeing your target at all times in order to hit it. Therefore, if you've been hit by an FPV drone, the FPV drone pilot knows what you are. And if it's a fire engine or an ambulance, it has been hit on purpose. There is no mistaking what you are going for and what you're hitting when you're an FPV drone pilot. That is a war crime there. That's in Kharkiv, injuring 2 medical workers, ambulance struck by an FPV drone. And here we have, and I talked about this yesterday, guided glide bombs hitting tree lines, or this is a tree line that has been hit by a number of these fairly valuable guided glide bombs, but the Ukrainians are using them to hit Russian positions now, not just buildings, command posts. We've seen them hit drone operator units, but here, I mean, it could be a drone operator unit hiding in a dugout, but I doubt it. You have to generally supply them quite a bit with drones every day. So they're usually in buildings, basements of buildings and whatnot. But that is, I think, an indication that the Ukrainians are using air to support their activities on the front line an awful lot more than they used to, that's for sure. Here we have a Yak-52 shooting down a reconnaissance drone. This is all An-10 reconnaissance drone. Machine gun fire out the back of an old plane. So that's your Yak there. I don't think that's a drone. That's a Yak. There's a drone just to the left of it. And it has shot it out of the sky. This is what you want. Low tech, low cost interventions here, interferences with these reconnaissance drones. So we have seen the Yak-52s get used before, particularly around Odessa. In fact, that's what it says, near Odessa. So they've got an airport around there that has at least one of these planes that takes off. Two-seater plane, person in the back is just shooting at drones. That sounds like quite a fun job. Okay, Ukraine's new... this is the Kyiv Independent. New ground drones are hitting the battlefield in ever-increasing numbers. I had a bit of a discussion about this yesterday, a similar sort of article. I was having a discussion with Bertold in a thread about, he was like saying that offensively UGVs are they have no future. The Ukrainian army completely would disagree, it seems. Ukrainian soldiers of the 214th Separate Assault Battalion operate their Reese Pro unmanned ground vehicle platform equipped with a remote control machine gun turret during training in Ukraine this is April this year. That's that picture. So they are training on these, they are using them, and they're using them in greater and greater numbers. So Ukraine's use of unmanned ground vehicles, UGVs, has accelerated in recent months. The development experts say could help ease pressure on infantry, exactly what I said yesterday, as Kyiv struggles with the ongoing recruitment problems and losses. Ukraine's first confirmed UGV, often referred to as ground drones, combat mission took place in December 2024 when the Charter Brigade used one in Kharkiv Oblast. It was the first time a homegrown UGV had participated in a full battlefield operations. Developments have come thick and fast since, and just last week, Ukrainian forces for the first time captured Russian troops without the use of infantry, relying solely on drones and ground robotic systems. And so, you've got another article looking at the same situation here. Ukraine is facing a growing manpower gap as Russia outpaces it in monthly recruitment. President Zelensky said in May that Russia mobilizes between 40 and 45,000 men each month. Ukraine manages just 25 to 27,000. Despite losing more than 1 million troops since the full-scale invasion began, according to Kyiv figures, Russia continues to attract new recruits with huge financial incentives. And so, what do you do about this? You have to replace troops with robots, and that's what they're doing. They're modular, they can come fit with tools, sensors, weapons, medical gear, and so on and so forth. You are going to see more and more of this. Here, let's take the Lyut system, for example. Comes with a 7.62mm machine gun, past combat testing in real battlefield situations. It can identify and engage targets day and night. Quiet electric motor and rugged build allow it to operate across challenging terrain and in harsh weather. Ukraine's military intelligence this week released a video of it in action. Having reached enemy positions, it destroys the Russian occupiers with dense machine gun fire. The armed and technological fight for Ukraine's freedom continues, the HUR said on Telegram. So that's one with the machine gun. We've got the Termit here, next generation tracked one, carrying up to 300 kilograms and operating in various terrains with a low tracked profile and improved weight distribution. And then you've got another one with the machine gun here, the D2112R. Then what else do you have? Maraka there. Got heavy load, can go for quite a distance, so on and so forth. So the future of Ukrainian UGVs. To support the long-term use and development of all types of drones, Ukraine created the Unmanned Systems Forces in early 2024. The new service integrates drones and robots across the military and helps standardize training and battlefield use based on frontline feedback. As part of the push, in April, the government held a Brave One trial where more than 70 UGVs and 50 Ukrainian manufacturers were tested under combat-like conditions. The tests focused on load capacity, mobility, resistance to jamming, and how well the machines could support troops on the ground. Over 200 Ukrainian companies are working on UGVs. So this is a really rich area for development. To keep up with demand, the government is simplifying production rules and accelerating certification. The director of procurement for the defense ministry said in May that Ukraine plans to deliver 15,000 ground robots for combat use by the end of this year. With new contractors signed and local industry expanding, 2025 could be the year robots become a common sight across the Ukrainian fronts. Interesting stuff there. Okay, we also hear that a Beryov B-200 aircraft belonging to the Russian Ministry of Emergency Situations disappeared over occupied Luhansk yesterday. So it disappeared from flight radar. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it's crashed or been shot down or something, but it is slightly weird because it hadn't previously looked like it was, needing to switch off its transponder. Planes, particularly Russian planes, have a tendency to switch off transponders, and ships as well, so they can't be tracked, but it could be that they have lost a large plane as well. Okay, we're going to go on to distant strikes. And last night saw far fewer Russian drones enter Ukrainian airspace, 64. 36 of them were shot down by air defense, 5 suppressed by electronic warfare. So that's 41 out of 64. So that's about 2/3 interception, which isn't brilliant, but at least it's a smaller number of drones overall. So you got 23 drones hitting 5 different locations. That is going to hurt. As far as what was hit throughout the night, let's have a look. We're actually going to go not to last night's strikes first. We're going to go to Dobropilia in the Donetsk region, very close to the front line, and getting an absolute hammering. Here is a big war crime, another big war crime. So Russian aviation struck an Aurora store in Dobropilia with a big 500 kilogram guided glide bomb. Initial reports indicate a significant number of people were killed and wounded. The exact casualty figures are still being determined. Aurora stores are a multi-market chain in Ukraine. These stores are essentially discounters or dollar stores specializing in affordable everyday consumer products. They're usually packed and not with soldiers. This is a war crime, as I said, so at least 2 dead, 14 injured. That's almost certain to get worse as people are still trapped under the wreckage after Russia's 500 kilogram bomb targeted the Aurora shopping mall, says Tim White. The news is bad there. 30 shops and 6. So there you go. Some of the images coming out from Dobropilia. 6 multi-story buildings damaged. Just lots of debris and all sorts around there. According to the latest data, after the enemy's aerial bomb attack on Dobropilia, 2 people dead and 27 injured, says Max 25 a little bit later. The extent of the damage: 54 retail outlets, 304 apartments in 13 buildings, 8 cars as well. Just absolute rampant war criminality. The targeting of Ukrainian civilians here is obvious. Russia dropped that bomb in a city centre of Dobropillia on the evening of the 16th of July when workers were heading home from their jobs. Not acceptable. Another war crime, says no reports. Talking about the stats, rescue workers are battling fires and clearing debris to confirm the full toll. Russia continues targeting civilians. And then we're going to go on to that. So that was yesterday daytime. And then the night before, this came out just after I did my hits and losses video yesterday. But one of the strikes 2 nights ago was Vinnytsia. So Russia struck Vinnytsia, and Poland's foreign minister Radoslaw Sikorski revealed that the Polish company Barlinek was the focus of Russia's attack that morning. Radoslaw Sikorski says it was deliberate and concerted and carried out from 3 directions. Barlinek produces parquet flooring made of oak or ash. More photos. Then Kharkiv was also hit as well 2 nights ago, but more photos came out of that. I mean, some pretty stunning photos, and not stunning in a good way. Visually arresting, but a real shame. So casualties reported at that strike in Vinnytsia 2 nights ago. Minister emphasised it was deliberate and carried out from 3 directions, as mentioned. Seeing if there's anything else going on there. Anton Gerashenko says the same. Produces flooring. Company supplies more than 12 million square meters of that flooring for 75 countries on 6 continents. Wow. 40% of those floors come from its Ukrainian plant in Vinnytsia, according to open information. A really big strike on commercial infrastructure there. Now, last night, a massive drone strike was underway across multiple regions of Russia, so the Ukrainians did send a lot in. I have a feeling at the moment the Russians are shooting down quite a lot of Ukraine's drones. It's just my sense, bit of speculation. I've been wondering about this as well, because although this can work both ways, you know where the drones are going to come from, because I presume they follow similar paths each time they go. All drones either have to pass over occupied territories of Ukraine, in which case you get a good sense of where these drones are before they even reach the Russian border, or they're going to come across Kharkiv or Sumy Oblast, a couple of these oblasts in the north. And generally, I would imagine, when you've got Lyuty drones, or these are slow-moving prop drones, usually, if you just have enough air defenses the other side of the border, you should be able to take these out. I mean, yeah, I'd imagine it's not massively difficult to take out Ukrainian drones coming into Russia, but then you could say you could say the same for the Russian drones coming into Ukraine. I guess you've got a wider, I guess, area that the Russian drones can come into Ukraine than Ukrainian drones can get out. That sounds invalid to say that, but actually, Ukrainians aren't going to send their drones hugely over the Black Sea or missiles. So you've got Russian ships out in the Black Sea sending stuff into Ukraine in a way that you're less likely to see drones go out. I don't think aerial drones generally don't go that way. You obviously get sea drones. Yeah, I don't know. It just seems to me like Russia, like Ukraine, aren't having massive success with their drones at the moment. Anyway, in Belgorod, a drone was shot down by air defense. Shrapnel allegedly killed one person and injured several others, damaging at least 6 homes. Russia says it shot down 40 Ukrainian drones this evening over Belgorod, Bryansk and Lipetsk regions. However, in Belgorod, at least 1 person died and 6 more were injured when debris from one drone landed on houses. And there is imagery suggesting all of that was taking place. Shot down drone there by the looks of it. The video shows a drone in Belgorod had been hit as it was on fire as it fell to the ground. Photos emerging of quite well preserved fragments of the drone are interesting. I love Belgorod written on it. Yeah, so no huge details coming out of successful Ukrainian strikes last night, other than maybe here, Shekino in Tula region. People there, locals, reported that the Shekino chemical plant was attacked. Local residents report that a barrel of methanol was hit and that local workshops were damaged. Well, you've got a flare going off there somewhere, but and lots of smoke around, so I don't quite know how much damage was done there. But yeah, see if Tim White has any more details of any more strikes. No, I don't think so. Damage, yeah, Voronezh, but again, like drones that were sent off course, hitting the occasional apartment building in Voronezh, nothing too serious, it seems. Shoska was attacked in Sumy region. That's been targeted a number of times, that settlement. 3 injured in Dnipro, seriously ill after an attack there. So the Russians still hitting a variety of places. Main place struck was Dnipropetrovsk. As far as the Russian strikes on Ukraine. But yeah, not too much detail of what the Ukrainians achieved in Russia last night. Okay, on to other bits and pieces. So we're going to start with here. So at Kursk, it's getting worse, and honestly worse by the day. Ukraine still has a last chance to save the agglomeration. Have a read of this thread, says Playfar. If you watch my video, my update video yesterday, we talk about quite a bit about Kursk being under an awful lot of pressure as the Russians are moving to the north, but also coming at it from the southwest as well. And they're moving north to be able to encircle Konstantinivka just up here as well to some degree. So situation, says Clément Moulin, situation around Pokrovsk is becoming more critical every day. Russian forces climb northeast of Pokrovsk and are threatening the Ukrainian supply roads. A new episode of Pokrovsk battle has started. Since weeks and even a month, this situation has become predictable. Here is my map of 2025 prediction made in January. Russian strategy remains the same. Encircle big cities. Pokrovsk remains objective number 1 for this year. I did this map a little bit more often than a week ago, says. It shows what I expect to happen in the next few weeks and months. As I said months ago, Putin wants both Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka. There also some indicators are showing more information. By analyzing the data of the visible impacts of FAB strikes, we can see Russia wants to progress westwards. So here you've got, I presume, Kursk and... Oh no, this is up into Tourette. So they are using their FAB strikes to really help the attacks, the Russians. We can see Russia wants to progress westward since the first days of June. Red is the impacts on June the 11th and yellow on July the 11th. So look at all these guided glide bomb airstrikes. So when I'm showing you images of what the Ukrainians are doing, videos with their Hammer guided glide bombs and the GBU, whichever variety they're using, just remember that the Russians are absolutely pummeling the Ukrainians with them. And it is really difficult for the Ukrainians. So that's how they won Avdiivka, remember. On a poulet volant map, a map I sometimes refer to, made for me that Moulin modified with the current front line, we mapped the previous supply lines from Dnipro to Pokrovsk. The role of Pokrovsk has now been temporarily replaced by Dobropilia. Dobropilia was that place where a cab bomb blew up the Aurora shopping setup. So, Dobropilia is the new Pokrovsk. As Pokrovsk gets taken, Dobropilia will be the next one. But yeah, really, really challenging stuff. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. As far as I'm not going to read the rest of the thread, but it is challenging in this area of the front line. Konstantinivka, Pokrovsk. Pokrovsk is on a knife edge at the moment. Ukraine can stop it from being taken, but it will require an awful lot of focus on two areas to stop that from happening. And the Ukrainians are stretched really very thin. Now, let's go back to the Russian economy, which is in all sorts of trouble. Oil production, says Evgen Yistrubin, in Russia fell by 3.5% year on year in January to May. In 2024, the decline was 2.7%. I believe that since the start of the war in 2022, Russia has lost 10% and will never restore this production since the fields are depleted. Wow. Strong words there. Collapse of the new building market as well. Assessment of sales of apartments and new buildings in June throughout Russia. Sales of apartments and units is 56% down year on year. Sale of square meters is 55% down year on year. And developers' revenue is 49% down year on year. So things are looking bad in the housing market. Property market. So Russian authorities have also called for an urgent tax increase to save the national budget, says the Kyiv Independent. Moscow needs to urgently raise more money as shrinking oil and gas revenues and a worsening economic outlook continue to strain the federal budget, a senior Russian lawmaker warned on July the 16th. That's all good news for Ukraine. Right. I reported that an Antonov flew the other day. I think I got it wrong. I was speculating that it flew to Leipzig. We know that. But did it deliver anything to Ukraine? Did it do a return journey? I think it just flew from Kiev to Leipzig. But there is an extensive video that has been released by Antonov, the manufacturer of this big AN-124 plane, that showcases the work they've done and the operation involved in getting this from Kiev to Leipzig. I mean, just the size of this plane is pretty phenomenal. These are big old planes and can carry quite a lot of. Be brave like Irpin, Antonov 124-100 there. Yeah, let's hope that this gets put to good use in delivering lots of significant equipment to Ukraine. Even if not directly, even if it's to airports in Europe. That's big. It's a huge old bloody plane, that, isn't it? Whew. Struggle getting that in the air. Wow. Anyway, one for the plane lovers out there. And just finally, as I reported in a short last night, it has been confirmed that Yulia Sviridenko is now Ukraine's new prime minister. 262 MPs voted in favour of her. She was previously the deputy prime minister involved in the negotiations. Has now replaced Denis Shmyhal, who's going to be defence minister, and the defence minister Rustem Umerov, I think, is going to be the new US ambassador to the US. Now, Sviridenko has said this, writing about her goals. It is a great honor for me to lead the Ukrainian government today. Our government is on course towards self-sufficiency, military, economic and social. My main goal is real positive results that every Ukrainian will experience in their lives. War does not give the right to delay. We must act quickly and decisively. Our priority steps in the first 6 months are to provide the army with high quality equipment, increase our own weapons production and improve the technological capabilities of the army. We will make every effort to support Ukrainian entrepreneurs. We need quick and tangible steps, including comprehensive deregulation, stopping unauthorized pressure on business, accelerating large-scale privatization, and further implementing effective support mechanisms so that everything is made in Ukraine. We have already started work on optimizing the state apparatus and are heading for a full audit of expenditures with the aim of reducing them. No political loyalty, just numbers and results. Well, good luck to her. That's a tough job, isn't it? Anyway, that's enough from me. Really appreciate your support. Don't forget that we have got a campaign that's ongoing. It's atpgeo.com/donate, and you can help us out. You can help us to help Drone Lab, this project with Jigar's Paw and the 47th Battalion. We are a hair's breadth away from $10,000. It'd be really great to get over that, and I'll be interviewing them shortly. So in the meantime, thank you so much. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Toodle pips.